welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle and my special guest. And I had the honor of being a guest on his podcast, Devin Miller. So Devin is founder and CEO of Miller IP Law. Yes, he's a lawyer. And I'm so excited because I didn't tell you, Devin, but I actually, when I was growing up, there was this book that my parents had on each year of school that you went through in elementary school. And so on it, you'd put, samples of your work, your school picture, and then what you wanted to be. So as I was growing up through that time, I was either going to be a flight attendant, at the time we called them stewardesses, or an attorney. Those were the two things that I kept flipping because they're so freaking familiar, right? I mean, similar to each other. So anyway, you're near and dear to my heart in that way. So the quote that we're going to kick off based on our beginnings conversation is when you align your actions with your purpose, magic happens. I don't know who to attribute that to, and neither does the internet, but I'll just leave it unknown. And for me, when I think about that personal experience, that I had actually someone at one point, and I'd never intentionally thought about it before, but asked me what my purpose in life was. And without missing a beat, I said it's to help people. So what I found personally for me with the case of that is it helped me I'm going to carve and eliminate out the stuff that didn't align to that. And it also allowed me the freedom, because sometimes people want to put us in boxes, right? If you do this, this is what it looks like. You have to do this, you have to do this, and you have to do this. Well, my purpose is to help people. I can do what I want. So I can charge over here. Yes, I can get discounts over here. Yes, I can go 5 or 10 minutes longer than maybe what the scheduled time is, if it makes sense to all involved. And so for me, it's that flexibility to step into who I am, as long as it still aligns with my purpose. So Devin, welcome, because the other thing that I mentioned is the podcast, and the podcast is the Inventive Journey podcast. You are also founder of that as well and host. Yep. And that is again, I talk about my purpose to help people. That's your purpose, is to help entrepreneurs on tips and tricks from other entrepreneurs' journeys. So welcome and thank you for your time, sir. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here. That was a great introduction, and probably more than I deserve. So definitely I appreciate that as well.
So tell me a little bit about you, how you got there, so people can see all the stats of your life. And it's so funny, we joked around about ages of your kids, right? Because it's a static number, and that does tend to change as they're getting older. And then all
once a year, they all have a birthday once a year, every year, so it all works out.
And so do we. So what's a little bit about your story and maybe some lessons in your leadership journey, because you have multiple businesses as well. And I'm just 4 kids, family, attorney. I mean, and by the way, if anybody's listening, if you want to experience a process, right, that literally walks you through, visit Devin's website, okay, on Miller IP Law. And watch everything that's there, or sign up to be a guest on his podcast. And literally, he will handhold you through every step of the way. And if anyone does process improvement, you will have a great appreciation for that. So sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
No, and I'll follow it up with, the easiest way on the podcast front, just go to inventiveguest.com. And that's where they can kick things off and get an insight as to at least our approach and how we do it. But now, to answer a bit of your question, kind of as to, how my journey, or what my journey is, kind of how it got started and where, or how I got to where I'm at today. I would say kind of the common thread, with most of my journeys, I like startups and small businesses. And so that's kind of been everything from, I started in undergraduate, and I got a couple degrees in Chinese and electrical engineering. And I kind of was getting towards the end of undergraduate. The undergraduate was focused on electrical engineering as kind of a career path. And I basically was getting towards the end of the undergraduate and saying, hey, I like being an engineer, but I don't want to be an engineer. In other words, a typical engineer, you're on a project for a longer period of time, and you're a small cog in a big wheel, and it takes you a majority of your career before you ever have any direction or insight or say so on kind of what the projects are developing. And so that just didn't quite appeal to me. So then I was kind of saying, okay, now what do I want to be when I grow up? And so it's kind of I like the business side, entrepreneurship, maybe going in, getting an MBA or doing some or business degree. And I also found the intellectual property side of things interesting,
Mhm.
because if you do that, you work with a lot of startups, a lot of businesses, you see a lot of innovations, and you help on the legal side of protecting it. And so my path was, rather than choosing one or the other, I just kind of went straight down the middle. I got or went off to graduate school and got both the MBA degree as well as the law degree at the same time. And really, throughout my career, it's kind of been a mixture of pursuing both. So I've always been a full-time attorney. Started out working for some other firms, and then starting my own Miller IP Law about 5 years ago. And I've also done several businesses along the path and continue to be involved in several of them. So kind of makes for a fun journey. And then along with that, I've got 4 kids, ages 8 to 13. Oldest is a son, and then 3 girls, and been married for about 16 years now. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
I love it. Yeah, and all the stats are right there too. What I loved is it's like you've got it on their food truck. And so I went on LinkedIn, and was looking through stuff, and it's like businesses were named and there was no end date because you were still part of it, right? And that's why I asked you about the food truck. And so who's on the food truck with you? Because you're a leader, right? So who's part of your team on that truck?
Yeah, so the food truck was real to kind of give the full answer. So I grew up, and I'd say my dad was entrepreneurial, but I never really got involved with any of the business he's doing other than kind of watching from afar.
Yeah.
And he took some different paths. And so kind of as I was talking with my wife and thinking about things and just going over things, I would say, hey, I would love to get my kids involved to the extent they want with earlier on being entrepreneurs, getting an idea of how to run a business, how to deal with customers, how to, price things, how to take payments and all of those things. And so,
Yeah.
great idea. Now, when you have kids that are 8 to 13, a little bit easier said than done, in the sense that most businesses don't lend themselves to doing a lot of that at that age. So I thought, what would be cool is to start a food truck. And so, we do it primarily on the weekends, a lot of times on Saturdays for a few hours, or, in the evenings or that. But they're right there involved with me. They help everything from, so the food truck, and during the winter, it's build your own hot chocolate or build your own popcorn. And then
Oh,
during the summer, it's build your own popcorn and or caramel apples. But really, they're there for everything from taking orders. They're the ones that take the payment. They're the ones that make the product. Now I'm there supervising, make sure it's all done right. But they get to interact with the customers and everything else. And so it's been one that's fun. I don't know that it's the knock it out of the park, make as much money as I can with some of the other businesses, and yet it's probably the one that's the most rewarding because I get to do it with the kids, and they get to learn a lot.
well, you know what? You say that, and I think about, so I'm going to go kids in that world and then team members in that world. So a couple of things that stand out for me as far as leadership goes, right? Is that you've empowered them. You said, okay, here are some guardrails. You're going to operate within those guardrails. I'm your safety net. So I'm here that you can tag me in if anything goes wrong, anything happens. Obviously, you're the one driving the truck, right? Because no
Yep.
one's that age yet. But when I hear all that stuff, what you're doing is you're exposing people on your team, which just happen to be your kids, to what it is to step in and lead and make decisions and have failures and deal with satisfied or dissatisfied people. Most parents, get a little bit nervous over the lemonade stand in front of the house. But
We
what I
just took a lemonade stand idea and put it on steroids and made it a real business, so it worked out.
Yeah, but what I love about it is all the concepts that you're talking about that you've stepped into with your kids are the same ones that successful leaders have with their teams. It's like, I'm here as the leader, I'm clear on what my role is, right? I'm going to drive the truck to the location. I'm going to be here as adult supervision to 8 to 13-year-old kids, right? Or I'm the leader, then I'm here to remove barriers, right? And I'm going to set the strategy on what we're doing, but the actual how and what they get there, that's you guys.
Yeah,
And I
no,
love that your
it has been
kids.
insightful. I think it's been a great experience both on them to get that experience with me on the leadership, and it's been one it's kind of an iterative process. I started out and everything from how do we design this, how do we decorate it, they were involved, to hey, what are the processes to make this. And it's been, we figured out, where the different kids, it's funny enough, some of them are better with working with people, others like it very process driven, and they like to build a product
Yeah.
and put it out. So it's been kind of fun to even see at an early age that you figure out where people are positioned the best and kind of what is the best role for them.
Yeah, I think about Patrick Lencioni, Six Working Geniuses, and that we all step into, God, now my voice, I'm sorry, we all step into different things that we excel in, different facets, if you will, of bringing a product to market. And that's what you've discovered across your kids. And
Yep.
that's what leaders, I think it's important to do, to discover at whatever in organizations, what does that look like across people on your team? Just because everyone's, I'm going to make stuff up right now, just because you're an accountant, right, or a leader on an accounting team, and so you've got this group of accountants and analysts, doesn't mean that everyone's built the same. Everyone's got different strengths that they step into. So for you, you're looking at it going, wow, so okay, yeah, play to your strengths. Here, if this is the thing that you love and you're great at it, go. Let me know when you want something else. And it's the same thing we can do with our teams. And I've watched teams just skyrocket when leaders don't feel the need to pigeonhole people into certain things because that's what the job description says.
Absolutely. No, I think it's easy to do. I mean, easy to pigeonhole people into, because once they kind of start to work on a project or start to do something, they start to get that expertise and understanding of how to do it. And so you're saying, that's where they should be, and not bad, great to get expertise and they can do it.
Yeah.
But to keep that ability and that flexibility to let them continue to grow and expand and evolve along with what they're doing is it makes it a more fun time for them, and a
Yeah.
better outcome for everybody.
I love it. Question for you, Devin, when you look back on where you're at now and where you were, what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh, oh, that I could probably go on forever if I were to give all the things that I know now that I wish I'd known younger. But I would probably, and it's one that's interesting. And you mentioned the podcast, as far as one of the questions we ask is, what is one of the biggest mistakes you make,
Yeah.
business mistakes? And the answer I hear the most frequent, there's a lot of diverse answers, but the one
Yeah.
I probably hear the most frequently is, I wish I'd got started earlier, or some
Yeah.
variation of that, or I
Yeah.
wish I'd had the self-confidence, or I wish I'd had the idea, or made the leap earlier, something
Yeah.
along those lines. And that's probably honestly what I would tell myself as well, as I went down, and in a good way, and I got a lot of experience, and when I don't know that I would necessarily always change it, but I probably went down the traditional path, at least more so on the legal side, than I necessarily would have if I were to look back and maybe talk to my younger self. Not that I wouldn't still be involved with the legal side, but
Yeah.
probably doing my own thing and starting the own firm, and kind of approaching things a bit differently would move up that time frame a bit.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always tend to look at stuff and I have a hard time answering that question. What was the mistake? What would you do? And everything, because literally everything that I did got me to where I'm at today, right? It's all the struggles, all the everything, all the learnings, all that stuff. It's like it makes up who's Michelle Smith. Well, Michelle Smith is a result of all the stuff that came before. So when I think about your journey and what you went through, um, what value when you look back on, because you went the traditional corporate kind of structure, and I've got this thing in my head and I don't want to jump into it, but what value do you think did that bring to you and what you do today by having that experience?
Yeah, and I would say it was half and half. I always had a side hustle business, something I was doing in addition to kind of the corporate experience. So I never was kind of all the way in.
Yeah.
But with that said, when I look back on the legal side of being an attorney, one of the things that was helpful is I worked for some large law firms early on in the career, worked for big clients, including like an Amazon and an Intel and Ford and others, and getting the experience and the insight both from working with attorneys that were awesome and high caliber, as well as from big clients, is it instructed a lot of the things I either liked and thought made sense, and the processes, and also the approach that I take with a lot of the legal work that I do, and also the ones or people that I are on the team now, and also what I didn't like. So in other words, I said I got an idea of, hey, this makes sense. I understand why they do it, and I think that's a great approach. And This is just because that's how attorneys have done it for a long period of time. That's what everybody's comfortable with, and that's the conventional wisdom. And yet, it doesn't make sense to me, so I'm not going to do it. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of one of that where I got a lot of insight both on what makes sense, why it makes sense, and what I will do when I ended up starting my own firm, as well as what I wouldn't.
Yeah. I'm bobbleheading, right? Because I agree with you, but I look at it's like health. I spent a bulk of my career in healthcare. And so when I look at it, I started out at a standalone, okay, hospital, and I went to a system hospital. When I look back at the journey, the way it played out, right, of starting out a standalone instead of just going to a large, is that I was able to touch and feel everything. I mean, I did DME, durable medical equipment. I did contracting for that. I did physician comp.
Mm.
I engaged with, I did the profit and loss statements. I did, I'm managing a budget for, a SNF addition, skilled nursing facility, all that stuff that I touched. Had I not done that, and I had just gone into the corporate world of this, system, I would have been this siloed piece of what's going on. For
Yeah.
you, the experience that you have is you don't know what you don't know, as the rest of us, right? So you got exposed to stuff to where you were able to look at it and think it's a benefit to all of us. This is what I'm going to take with me, right? On this structure that makes sense, that supports all this stuff. And here's what I can intentionally leave behind, which is similar to what we tend to do as humans when the new year starts, right? What am I going to leave behind? And what am I bringing forward with me into this new year? And I think that perspective is super important, because otherwise people could be stuck in this. I should have done it sooner. I shouldn't have right. And
Mm.
my thing is this is we got Zippo we can do about what happened yesterday, but we got 100% control about what we're doing on go forward. And I love that you took what you wanted and you pulled it into who you are and what you do today.
No, and I said probably the biggest thing for me, and I think a lot of times when people jettison things, it's easy to set the goals of the New Year's resolution or within business or whatever it is for the things that are a pain point or a problem. In other words, hey, I
Yep.
need to fix this. I need to, whether it's, hey, I need to get in shape, I need to lose weight, I need to spend more time with the family, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And yet I think that, for me, it's always, the question I really should ask is why am I doing these things that doesn't make sense to me? And that's always been kind of my guiding thing of within business, everything from the way we set up, pricing to how we set up the structure with working with clients. Everything is just, hey, does this make sense to me? If I can't justify why it makes sense, then let's figure out a better way to do it. And I think that's a lot of times a great guiding principle as well.
Yeah, no, I love that, because what's springing to mind for me, I did process improvement for years, is what problem are we solving? Are we doing this thing to do a thing, or is this thing actually making things better? So I love that. Devin, there was a quote that you had that I wanted to pull in too. What was it?
Yeah, and my quote has been attributed to a few people, that is kind of one that like that on the internet,
Yeah,
where it's not quite sure who said it, but my favorite quote is, for all that it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Or there's a few
right.
variations of it, but I love that
Well,
quote. I
no,
love.
and yeah, I love that. And when I think about and listening to your journey and everything going on, and then we just had Martin Luther King Day a few days ago, because we're recording on a Wednesday after that, is don't sit silent, right? Whether it's don't sit silent, don't sit suffering, and if you're in a job that you're like, oh my, I don't want to do this, is not tomorrow's not guaranteed. Have a bias toward action. Do something, right? It doesn't have to be a food truck. It does pick your toppings with apples and popcorn or cocoa. But do the thing, step into the thing, dip your toe in the thing, right? And you can do the thing. To your point, you had a side hustle while you were still working at a W-2 wage. Do that thing, test it, but don't go later and go, man, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Do it. So, Devin, I appreciate your time so much. And getting to know more about you and your background. And I freaking love the stories. So, what are one or two things that you would love people to walk away with around the stuff that we chatted about today?
Yeah, and you hit on it. I think it is, or better than I could. Is that I think that the bias towards action is a great area to focus. And not now. I'm a proponent just to quit your job to go off and do
Yeah.
something. If I did that with the wife and kids and obligations, I would have been scared out of my mind of how to do that. But at the same time, I don't. There's very seldom is there not a way that you can't do something, whether it's starting out as a side hustle, bootstrapping it, doing it on the side, testing it out, doing something to get it started. And I think that's what a lot of times people tend to almost have a binary. Either, hey, I have to all be all in and just, burn the ships and do it. And you should be all in, but it doesn't, all in doesn't mean that you can't or incrementally have that plan of, hey, I'm going to start it out, try it out here, do these steps. And then, as it progresses, evolves and makes sense, make it a more full-time focus. So I think that would
Yeah.
probably be, as you hit on, one of the great things to focus on for people.
Yeah, no, I like that. There's a lot of stuff that comes to mind when I hear that as well. And the thing is, I'll go back to something my mentor said, because I want to piggyback on what you said, is what's a little bit better look like? So to your point, it's not a pendulum swing, right? It's not like I'm all W-2, I'm all because the runway typically, okay, is a little bit longer, if you will, than what we anticipate. So give yourself time for that. It's not something that, oh my gosh, in 2 months this has to happen. And so my question to you is, does it really in 2 months? So question yourself, figure out what the little bit better looks like, and then just kind of dip your toe in it, learn from it. So anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will put Devin's contact information in the description of the podcast when I post it. And until next time, please like, share, subscribe. This is Leadership Soundbites, and thank you very much.